And so there's going to be large disruption of the way we live our lives. Jeff Rubin, the economist for CIBC, has been all over the news recently for his report saying that. So we have to adjust. We have to find ways in society to adjust. That includes alternatives like public transit. It includes anti-sprawl measures. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be concentrating on, including advising people that this is coming and we have to prepare for it.
David. There's 2 points here, because we're basically talking about the cost of fossil fuels. One, the sustainable transportation strategy, which is talked about previously, due next year. That will deal with a lot of reducing the impacts from volatile fossil fuel prices, and specifically the price of crude. But also in the electricity sector, we are 88% dependent on fossil fuels today, and the strategy that we've taken is to get us off of that carbon addiction and get that down. If you diversify your sources, you're going to have more price shock absorbers to buffer that increase in fuel costs.
Thanks for your question. And yeah, what's your name?
Dan Roscoe, and I work with Scotia Windfields. There's dozens of questions I'd like to ask you, but I'll choose just one. My question's about the incorporation of sustainable technologies and techniques into our public infrastructure, our provincially managed public infrastructure. We have been manufacturing world-class solar panels here in Nova Scotia since 1981. Yet, from my knowledge, I think there's only one provincially managed building, public infrastructure building, that incorporates these technologies. It was installed in 1987 and still works. Why have we chosen not to incorporate these technologies in our schools, hospitals, jails, long-term care facilities?
Thank you. Well, that's what tonight's all about, isn't it? Isn't that why we're here? Because we need to come up with answers to the question that you've raised. And why isn't it part of it? I don't know why it isn't part of it, because many people have been advocating for these changes for a long time. Certainly as a member of a Liberal team and hopefully a Liberal government, I would say to you this, that we talked earlier about the fund, a fund to promote the conversion of last century's energy systems to the ones we need to meet today's challenges. I think it's important. We talked a bit tonight here about mega projects to secure energy for the future. But we need to bring it to the doorsteps of Nova Scotians. And those are the projects we would support. Thank you.
Okay. Howard?
Well, Mr. Roscoe is entirely right. This company is called Thermodynamics. It's over in Burnside. It was started by engineering professor Peter Allen. It's been in place in Nova Scotia for quite a number of years. It's a wonderful company. It produces a great product. And it's a complete disgrace that we don't have their panels all over public buildings. I agree.
Dan, and I know that you'd be aware that as part of the Climate Change Action Plan, now any new public buildings have to be built to a certain energy efficiency standard called LEED Silver. Next year that's going to go to gold, and eventually by 2020 we're aiming for carbon neutral. Those sorts of innovations, I'm sure, will be helpful in attaining those results. Also, net metering, if it's applicable for residential, gives a better return from Nova Scotia Power to the person that's selling back into the grid. They get a retail price. It's a full credit, as opposed to what, say, a wind farm producer might receive from them. So that's another way to encourage that sort of innovation.
Yeah, I agree. It's an embarrassment that we haven't used your product more.
It's not his product.
Yeah, sorry. We definitely, it should be implemented, and I agree with David. All provincial buildings should now be built to a LEED standard. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to excuse myself. I'm going to run really quickly to the bathroom.
Jim Gill, I live on Chubutka Road, a road that was widened recently by through the support of several aldermen or councillors that are now running for the Liberals and the Tories. So I appreciate your comments, but it would be interesting if you judge by what you do, not what you say. I'm wondering, just for a question to the audience, how many of you believe we're better off today with Nova Scotia as a private for-profit company. Clap if you believe that. Nova Scotia Power, I'm sorry, is a private for-profit company. Well, that's pretty interesting. For each of the candidates, including the representative of the Tory party which sold Nova Scotia Power, what will your party do to make Nova Scotia Power do what you need it to do, not just what it seeks to do to make the most money possible?
And how would that go to you?
Okay, Nova Scotia Power was privatized in 1992 by the predecessor Tory government on really what was a whim at the time. We've lost money since the privatization. We're pretty far into it at this point, but the alternative to public ownership is to regulate. And if you're not going to own an enterprise, you have to make sure that you stand up to that company, especially a monopoly producer like Nova Scotia Power, and enforce what is in the public interest. And that is what our government would be interested in doing if we got the chance to form one. Thank you.
And just, Brendan, for your benefit, the question was, if you formed a government, what would you do to force Nova Scotia Power to do what it needs to do rather than pursue its own profit? Is that...
Yep.
Okay, good. David?
Yeah, Nova Scotia Power is a natural monopoly, and as Howard has alluded to already, it is controlled by the Utility and Review Board. The Utility and Review Board is charged with implementing the direction that is given to it by the government of Nova Scotia through various acts and regulations. There are a lot of things involved both in the energy strategy and the climate change action plan, which will implement them, and they are obliged to work through the regulator to make sure that they're in compliance.
Brendan?
I think feed-in tariffs is the answer to this. It would put Nova Scotia in a situation where they would be the operator, but they would also be generating power. So I think by having a feed-in tariff system, they'll also be producing energy to allow other investors to come in, and hopefully our own investors to invest in renewable energy and give a fair price. By doing that, it takes Nova Scotia Power away from just generating power. They're also the operator. So it's kind of like they'd have two different functions. And so as the operator, we can legislate them to improve the grid, and we probably have to work with them and help them fund it too. But I believe feed-in tariffs is the way to that.
Okay, Jane?
Thank you. Well, there's no doubt that Liberals believe that Nova Scotia Power must be more accountable to the citizens of Nova Scotia. The Liberal plan requires that Nova Scotia Power, when it's considering a rate adjustment application from Nova Scotia Power, consider both the reliability of the service that's been provided and consider the well-being of Nova Scotians when that assessment is made. As well, we would require that there be more transparency and disclosure on outages in the province. Certainly, as I've been talking to people on Peninsula Halifax, I was shocked to find that there were people who were experiencing outages every week, even in good weather that we're having now from Nova Scotia Power. That is unacceptable, and that is not what Liberals are looking for.
This next question is going to David Morse first.
My name is Martha Brisbois, and my question relates to public transportation. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on the feasibility of light rail transit to connect HRM's bedroom communities and satellite communities to the downtown core.
Yes.